Rabies. It's exceptionally common, but people just don't run into the animals that carry it, often skunks especially, and bats. Let me paint you a picture. You go camping, and at midday you decide to take a nap in a nice little hammock while sleeping. A tiny brown bat, in the rage stages of infection, is fidgeting in broad daylight, uncomfortable, and thirsty, and you snort. Startling him, he goes into attack mode. Except you're asleep, and he's a little brown bat, so weighs around 6 grams. You don't even feel him land on your bare knee, and he starts to bite. His teeth are tiny, hardly enough to even break the skin, but he does manage to give you the equivalent of a tiny scrape that goes completely unnoticed. Rabies does not travel in your blood. In fact, a blood test won't even tell you if you've got it. Antibody tests may be done, but are useless if you've even been vaccinated. You wake up, none the wiser. If you notice anything at the bite site at all, you assume you just likely scraped it on something. The bomb has been lit, and your nervous system is the wick. The rabies will multiply along your nervous system, doing virally no damage, and completely undetectable. You literally have no symptoms. It may be 4 days, it may be a year, but the camping trip is most likely long forgotten. Then one day your back starts to ache, or maybe you get a slight headache. At this point, you're already dead. There is no cure. There's no treatment. It has a 100% kill rate. Absorb that. Not a single other virus on the planet has a 100% kill rate. Only rabies. And once you're symptomatic, it's over, you're dead. So what does that look like? Your headache turns into a fever, and a general feeling of being unwell. You're fidgety, uncomfortable, and scared. As the virus that has taken its time getting into your brain finds a vast network of nerve endings, it begins to rapidly reproduce, starting at the base of brain, where your pons is located. This is the part of the brain that controls communication between the rest of the brain and body, as well as sleep cycles. Next you become anxious. You still think you have only a mild fever, but suddenly you find yourself becoming scared, even horrified, and it doesn't occur to you that you don't know why. This is because the rabies is chewing up your amygdala. As your cerebellum becomes hot with the virus, you begin to lose muscle coordination and balance. You think maybe it's a good idea to go to the doctor now, but assuming a doctor is smart enough to even run the tests necessary in the few days you have left on the planet, odds are they'll only be able to tell your loved ones what you did of later. Jaw twitchy, shaking, and scared. You have the normal fear of not knowing what's going on, but with the virus really messing up the amygdala, this is amplified 100-fold. It's around this time the hydrophobia starts. You're horribly thirsty, you just want water, but you can't drink. Every time you do, your throat clamps shut and you vomit. This has become a legitimate active fear of water. Your thirst, but looking a glass of water begins to make you gag and shy back in fear. The contradiction is hard for your hot brain to see at this point. By now the doctors will have to put you on force to keep you hydrated, but even that's futile. You were dead the second you had a headache. You begin hearing things, or not hearing at all, as your thalamus goes. You taste sounds, you see smells. Everything starts feeling like the most horrifying acid trip anyone has ever been on. With your hippocampus long under attack, you're having trouble remembering things, especially family. You're alone, hallucinating, thirsty, confused, and absolutely, undeniably terrified. Everything scares the literal crap out of you at this point. These strange people in lab coats. These strange people standing around your bed crying, who keep trying to get you to drink something and crying. And it's only been about a week since that little headache that you've completely forgotten. Time means nothing to you anymore. Funny enough, you now know how the bat felt when he bit you. Eventually, you slip into the dumb rabies phase. Your brain has started the process of shutting down. Too much of it has been turned to liquid virus. Your face droops, your drool. You're all but unaware of what's around you. A sudden noise or light might startle you, but for the most part, all you can do is just stare at the ground. You haven't really slept for about 72 hours. Then you die. Albus, you die, and there's not one freaking thing anyone can do for you. Then there's the question of what to do with your corpse. I mean, sure, burying it is the right thing to do, but the freaking virus can survive in a corpse for years. You could kill every rabid animal on the planet today, and if 2 years from now, some moist, Perserved, rotten hunk of used to be brain gets eaten by our animal. It starts all over. So yeah, rabies scares the crap out of me, and it's freaking everywhere. I remember reading about this guy that fell into a pit of concrete powder and he inhaled some of it. It set in his lungs, causing him to very slowly and painfully suffocate. Wet concrete is also a chemical reaction. He was burned to death, lungs first. Respiratory distress. A couple months ago I was on a train when it stopped and asked all medical personnel to report to my car. I look back and a man is on the floor with his girlfriend sobbing. Everyone went quiet, so I heard him gasp, "I can't breathe," and I was so scared I would witness this man's panicked last breaths. After about 20 minutes they were able to get him stable enough to carry him off. Lava, it's a lot worse than movies make it look. Spicy honey. You can drink lava, but only once /forbidden snacks. Drown in the mud like soldiers during World War II. Freak that. I heard Dan Cullen's podcast on Passchendaele and the unmitigated horror of slowly drowning in mud over the course of a few days haunts my sleep. They begged our brothers in arms to shoot them. Driving off a bridge into deep water, it's never happened to me, but for some reason the sound of a windshield cracking upon impact with water and the feeling of a seatbelt digging into my neck and hips pop up in my nightmares a lot. I have a hard time crossing bridges in vehicles, thanks to that. Glowworms. The way they kill their prey is one of the most painful ways to die in the animal kingdom. They use the silk stands to attract prey, paralyze them, drill a hole in the side of their head and fill their insides with acid, then leave them for 2 weeks to digest. Nature's slow cooker. Being skinned. My biggest fear is being crushed to death, or being stuck in such a way that I can't move. I don't have a severe claustrophobia. I'll climb in a small enclosed space. If it's safe, no problem. I used to do it all the time when I was a welder. Currently reading a book about the radium girls. They used radium paint to paint watch dials during World War II and through the 1920s and had to put the brushes in their mouth to point the bristles. Some of them had their jaws rot right out of their heads. Absolutely awful way to go. And the company had the audacity to try and cover up that radium was dangerous. Radium's half-life is 1700 years or something like that, so their bodies are still radioactive. Dying from Alzheimer's. I've seen too many people in nursing homes and too many family members die from it. It hurts me now to think, if I had Alzheimer's I'll forget the ones I love. I'll probably hurt them emotionally and physically. I might cheat on myself. People might say yeah, but you won't know. But freak that, I don't want it. I'm also taking care of my dad who has Parkinson's. It's another freaking awful way to die. To slowly lose control of your entire body and you're just a prisoner inside your head. And it's not an instant death, it takes years. My grandfather slowly succumbed to Alzheimer's. He was a sergeant in the Army's Air Division during WW2. He was a level-headed bull of a man who could make you regret your whole life with a stare. He was also super sweet to his grandkids and used to tell us all kinds of war stories. Watching him slowly wither mentally and physically until he couldn't remember us was one of the hardest parts of my childhood. Alzheimer's is terrifying, and I hope that, if it ever affects me, we have a cure for it, or that assisted suicide is legal. Drowning is one of my worst fears. Once when I was 9, I was sitting on my friend's shoulders in a lazy river at a pool, and she said something so funny that I fell off her back, and I accidentally laughed underwater, inhaling a bunch of water, and even once I resurfaced I still couldn't breathe. It was one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. I thought I was going to drown in the open air because there was so much water in my lungs. Luckily it never translated into a fear of water, but I'll never forget the sensation. Make sure to like and subscribe so we can watch together.